Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 257 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I really do love to write, and writing our first two books during the pandemic really helped the entire team achieve one of the most fulfilling dreams that we had ever tried to do together. It brought us closer together as a team. It made us feel more productive during the pandemic when we couldn't go into these large in-person programs on college campuses. And it allowed us to really understand our own stories and how that applies to today's college students. I think you're going to learn quite a bit in that regard with our next guest. Our next guest is Allison Hong Merrill. She writes in both Chinese and English, both fiction and creative nonfiction, which means that she spends a lot of time looking up words on dictionary.com. She is a Pushcart Prize nominee, and her work has won both national and international awards, including national championship in the 2010 Life Story Writing Competition in Taipei, Taiwan, and the grand prize in the 2019 MAST People of Earth Writing Contest. She's the inaugural winner of Sandra Carpenter Prize for Creative Nonfiction, first place winner of the 2019 Segullah Journal Writing Contest, and first place winner of 2020 Opossum Flash Contest, and many, many more. Her memoir, it's called 99 Fire Hoops, was released in September of 2021, and it continues to receive literary awards. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. Such a great honor to be here today.
Of course, I can't wait to share your story with our listening audience because I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. And so I really can't wait to dive in. But I guess we need to take a step back, which is that, essentially you're a Taiwanese immigrant. You chose Brigham Young University in Utah, of all places. So I'm wondering what made you choose BYU in Utah, of all places? Very different from your upbringing.
Exactly. And thank you so much for such a meaningful question. So BYU was actually the third university that I attended for my undergraduate studies. The reason why I chose BYU is because BYU was a high-ranking school, right? The ranking was really high, and the tuitions, you will not believe, back in the 1990s, the tuitions at BYU was $1,200 per semester. That was really, really great for me, like low budget, but high quality education. I thought I was getting a great value, for the amount of money I paid for the education. But also because I am a foreign language major. I am always in learning about foreign language and foreign culture. And at the time, I was also an international student, and BYU provided both. BYU had a really strong foreign language department, and they had a large community of international students. And I thought, oh, I'll fit right in. This is perfect for me. And that's why I eventually ended up at BYU.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I mean, I chose the University at Buffalo. They also have a very big international presence with international students, and then they have, these branches in different countries all over the world. And it was also very good quality education for a low price. So I was looking at the same things you were looking at. I didn't want to go into debt with tens of thousands of dollars every single semester. It just didn't make any sense to me, and I just wanted a quality education. So I think we look at things really from the same lens, and so that makes total sense to me. Now, you were a Taiwanese immigrant. You come to the United States in 1995 to go to BYU, and you are a 24-year-old divorcee with no children at the time. So the people that you're going to school with, your classmates, they are anywhere between 18 years old to 22 years old. And many of them were either engaged or they were already married with children. So that looking around, all of a sudden you feel like the world's biggest loser because you're not married, right? And so you didn't like also that you had an accent. You weren't really like all of your friends. You didn't necessarily fit in. And really, you just wanted to fit in and be like all the other students on campus. So now all of a sudden, you have this crippling shame and all of this really self imposed pressure, which drove you to make all of these bad choices. So, talk to us a little bit about, the shame, the pressure that you felt, and then some of the bad choices that you made.
Thank you so much for such a thorough introduction. So to answer this question, I had to go back and give you a little bit of the backstory. So as you mentioned, I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Taiwan in a Buddhist culture.
Mhm.
And when I was 15 years old, I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And there's a nickname for the church is the Mormons, right? So I joined the Mormon church when I was 15. And then when I was 18, I graduated from high school and I tested into um, a Catholic university in Taipei. And when I was going to that Catholic university in Taipei, I met a 20-year-old missionary from Texas, and let's call him Cameron, because Cameron is a good name. Okay, so I met Cameron. And Cameron was serving at the time in my college town. And he served there for a year or so. And then anyway, so he finished his mission and he went home to Texas. And then when in my junior year of college, I turned 21 and I decided, hey, I want to serve a mission too. So I dropped out of school because the educational system in Taiwan was not set up the way that, say, BYU was set up to accommodate young men and young women who wish to serve a mission. They could defer their education for a year, for 2 years, and then go and serve. And then when they finish their missions, they could return to BYU. But in Taiwan, the educational system was not set up for that. So for me to serve a mission, I had to just drop out completely, knowing I will not be able to go back. But at the time, I was 21. I was so enthusiastic. I loved the Lord. I wanted to go and do his work. So I dropped out. And then on Chinese New Year, I went back home to tell my dad and about my decision as I want to serve a mission. I dropped out of school. And he was so furious. Like, seriously, I never seen him so mad. And he kicked me out of his house. It was Chinese New Year. He kicked me out of the house and he told me to never go back. So I was disowned. And you know what that meant? That meant when everybody else was celebrating major holiday with their families, with their loved ones, I was alone on the street, shivering in the cold because Chinese New Year was in the winter. And I was looking, this is back in the 1990s, there was no cell phones. There were a lot of pay phones on the street. So I was going up and down the street in the rain looking for forgotten change in payphone, the coin slots. I was going through every coin slots looking for coins. But through the help of bishops and local church members, I was able to get off the street and went on to serve a mission. And after my mission, I could not go back to school because I dropped out, and I could not go back home because my dad disowned me. I had no place to go. And I had no skills because I didn't graduate from college. I had no diploma. I couldn't get a job. And just then, Cameron, remember Cameron?
Sure.
He proposed to me. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, you know, what? God's will?
Yeah.
And so, of course, I said yes. And so we were engaged. And I applied to go to the same university he was attending in Texas at the time. I got a scholarship. So I came to America to go to the same university that he was attending in Texas. And so we got married. And soon after we got married, he became an atheist. He walked out of the faith. He did not believe in God anymore.
Mm.
And 16 months into our marriage, one evening, it was in November, I went home from school, and I went back to apartment, and I discovered that he had moved out. He had moved all the furniture, and he had cut off all the utilities and ended the apartment lease and took all the money out of the bank and filed for divorce. So then now this is the second time I became homeless and penniless, right? But then now, by now, you probably see the pattern. When I was put in that situation, I went to the church. I went to the church for help, and the bishop and the local church members helped me. And through their help, I was able to transfer to BYU. So that's why BYU was the third university I attended, because of the previous experiences I had. So coming to BYU, I was really happy to be there because BYU was a church-sponsored school. So I knew that I would be surrounded by a huge student body who also were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I thought, oh, it would be awesome because we all have the same belief. We believe in the same God, and we believe in the same doctrine. And this was going to be, it would work out, right? But I did not know that life is not perfect. Right? So even though I thought I was in the perfect surrounding to finish my education and to maybe meet friends who shared the same belief, and it will be perfect. But I was young, or I was 24, and I had so many classmates who were younger than I was, and they were engaged, and they had children. They were married, and they had children. And on campus, on BYU campus, I kid you not, I could not make this up. You had these young girls, right, in their early 20s, maybe they're still teenagers, 18, 19-year-olds. They walked on campus with a baby stroller, their own baby, in their stroller, and the strollers were packed with diapers and toys and snacks. And it looked like these young women were going to a park for a play date, It did not look like they were going to classes, but they were going to classes. And then in the classroom, you will have these babies sitting in the back of the classroom, and they were playing with their toys. Once in a while, you will have a bouncy ball rolling down from the back of the room to the front. And then nobody complained, because it was a very common phenomenon at BYU. And the reason why this is common is because the church doctrine focused on the importance of family, and church leaders encourage young adults in the church to not delay starting a family. And so a lot of these BYU students, they got married and they started their families really young, They had a joke calling Brigham Young University, Brigham Young, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was true. And so, well, remember my background, my experience, compare with these young women who were younger than I was, but they already had a head start in life, being a wife, being a mother. That was always my dream. And so I started to be like, why am I such a loser? I'm 24 and they're 18 and look at this. And I continue to that poison seep deep down into my mind, and I kept telling myself, well, I'm a loser. I'm just a loser. I'm a loser. And I don't want to be a loser. Who wants to be a loser? And so I thought, well, I had to do something. I had to do something to get what they have. I want what they have. And so the first thing I had to do is to get on dates. So I started going on dates. But the thing is, all these guys I went out with, whenever I told them about my divorce, told them about my past, they stopped seeing me. They didn't like the fact that I was divorced. So then I learned, because you learn from your experience. So I learned to hide, to not tell my past to anyone. And that worked out for me because I was pretending to be somebody I wasn't. I was pretending to be like the rest of my classmates who had a very clean past, right? With no ex-husband, no abuse, no being, they were not disowned by their father, and they were not abandoned by their husband. Nothing like that. Nothing traumatic, nothing dramatic in my past. I was just pretending to be like the rest of the pure, beautiful 18-year-old blonde girls who were so attractive, right? I even tried to dye my hair blonde. It didn't work. If you have black hair, it did not work. It will turn orange. And so, really, I was working really hard to be somebody I wasn't. And they worked out for me because these guys, they started to suddenly all, wanted to go out with me. And so I went out with this guy, let's call him Gavin. So I went out with Gavin, and I wasn't attracted to him, but he was a genius. And I like genius. I like really brainy, nerdy guys. And so I went out with him, and 2 weeks after we went out, he proposed to me. Wow. And now what did I do? 2 weeks. I did not even know his middle name, right? And then he proposed, and I thought, I could not let this opportunity go. I had to keep this guy in my life, because how often, like, if I did not say yes to him, if I did not accept his proposal, I might never get married. Look at me. I'm 24, I'm old, I'm divorced. And, so I had all these thoughts coming back to me, and it's like, I had to keep this guy. So I said yes to him, I accepted his proposal. Wow. And so he called his parents in Washington, D.C. And he said, oh, I just got engaged. Come and meet my fiance. So his mother came to Utah to meet me. And she was so excited about this wedding. So she started to make plans, right? To have my wedding dress made and to go pick up a ring for me. And then she went and found this really expensive photographer to take our portraits, and she sent out invitations to all their friends, and their friends were apparently like really wealthy business people in DC and politicians. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I am in trouble. I did not tell them who I was, and if they found out about my past, it will ruin their reputation. And so I was like, well, what should I do? Should I continue to pretend, whatever? I decided to continue to pretend. See how bad that choice was. That was just one bad choice after another. So about a week before the wedding, I was like, oh my God, I could not eat. I could not go to classes. I was just physically sick because I was like emotionally drained, right? Mm-hmm. And Gavin found out from one of my previous roommates. He found out from her the secrets I've been keeping from him, and he was devastated. He came and confronted me, and he's like, is this true? So he told me what he found out. And I did not tell him anything. I did not. Anyway, I was still trying to hide my secrets from him. So I did not tell him, yes, it's true. I did not confess. I didn't say anything. But eventually, he got the clue from my silence that everything was true. So he called off the wedding, and he said, I cannot believe anyone in the world will make that kind of choice. Like, you made a really horrible choice. You try to pretend to be somebody you're not. I would have accepted you the way you were had you not lied. I would completely accepted you, but you lied, and that's the part I cannot accept. And that woke me up. Why was I trying so hard to try to get people into my life, but I was really pushing them away because they found out the real me, and they were disappointed by my choices. So then I thought, wow, I will never lie about who I am again. Mm-hmm. So that was a great lesson, a painful event to get to the simple truth is just be proud of who you are. And because your past doesn't define you, your past does not define you. They only refine you. So just be proud of where you are today.
Yeah, that's a great message, I think, and hopefully college students are going to be able to learn from that, because you obviously paid a huge price, and you learned a huge lesson out of that. I think we should be talking about racism too, because I think you face racism not only in your own family but also in the predominantly white neighborhood long before the pandemic even happened. So, in
Yeah.
your opinion, I mean, how do we stop hatred, not just towards Asian people, but also just anybody?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike, and it's so timely. Oh, timely and timeless too. So I feel like when we meet a new friend, when we meet a group of people, we need to meet the person, not the color.
Mhm.
And we need to embrace these individuals, not their ethnicity. Because everyone you see, everyone is a child of God. That means they are your heavenly brother and sister. So if we can truly understand that everyone we we see, we encounter, everyone we interact with is really just your brother and your sister, you cannot hate your brother and sister. You just can't. They're your blood. And literally, they're your brother and sister. And so I think that's the fundamental truth. I think racism is a choice. And if you can choose racism, obviously you can choose love too. So why not choose love, right? And I feel
Mhm.
like sometimes when people have um, hard feelings for people who look different than themselves, it's because they fear, they have fear of the unknown. We're
Mhm.
always, and I think it's very common, we always are afraid of something or somebody we don't know. Like some people are afraid of death because they don't know what happens after death. So they fear the unknown. And I feel like some people are afraid of people of color because they don't know about their culture, because they don't know about their background, they don't know about their ancestry or their history, and that makes them afraid. So I feel like if you are willing to open your heart to really see these people who look different than you, to look past the color, look past the ethnicity, and try to understand their culture, try to understand and learn about their background, their history, you will be very surprised to find, oh, there's really not much difference between that person and me. We're the same. We have the very basic needs of being loved. We
Mhm.
all do. It doesn't matter what color it is. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to love. And that's the universal truth. And so, having that in mind, racism will not exist.
hmm I think that's great advice, and I think that's something that we can think about even as it becomes more and more common for blended families here in the United States. I think that's a really good way to look at it. The other thing I want to ask you, because just from your background, what can we learn from the Taiwanese about living a healthy lifestyle all year long? I think there's some lessons that we can learn about that here in the United States.
Yes. Mike, I'm so glad you asked because I know that you have so many listeners who are young college kids, right?
hmm
And this is a great time, the prime time in their life. They're young, they're healthy, and they're starting out, building their career. And I think taking care of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, all this is very important. And I have some tips just for them, just for
Perfect.
your listeners.
All
The
right.
first thing is when you're eating, when you're eating a meal, try to avoid eating while watching a sports game. Because if you're watching a sports game, if you're going to a basketball game, right, or if you're going to a baseball game live and you're eating nachos or popcorn or whatever, you will eat more than your body needs because you're watching these athletes in action. You're watching them jump and run and wrestle, right? And psychologically, you think you are dumb. You're doing the same thing, right? I can't tell you why. This is scientifically backed fact that when you're watching sports events, even on TV too, and you're eating, you feel like you need to keep eating because you're so exhausted. You need to supply energy to your bodies because you're running, but you're not. You're watching, but you think you're running and you think you're jumping, you think you're wrestling. And so you start to binge eat when you're watching sports. So try to avoid watching sports when you're eating. And if you're a girl, right? If you're a girl, try to eat with a man, any man, because science, this is all science. Science had proved that if you're a girl or a woman, you will be less likely to mindlessly eat when a man is in your presence. And I can't tell you why. Maybe they're self-conscious about, oh, there's a man watching me eat. I better not binge eat. But you will be less likely to mindlessly eat when a man is in your presence.
Wow.
And more things, if you can, take a nap every day. This is healthy for you. Take a nap for about 15 to 30 minutes between noon and 1 p.m. This is the time when you should take a nap. Everybody, not just for babies, not just for old people, everyone. You really can benefit because your body can recharge at that midday, 1 hour midday time, and then you will have energy and you have the strength to keep going on without having to drink energy drinks to keep you awake in the afternoon. Okay, another thing is when you're watching TV shows or when you're watching basketball games on TV or when you're listening to the Fraternity Foodie Podcast, try not to sit there, right? Get up and go get a weighted hula hoop and start spinning when you're listening to Mike's podcast. You can do it because this is very good, especially when you get the weighted hula hoop because it's heavy and it will work your midsection. And this is actually very good at stimulating your organs right here and to stimulate them and to help your digestion function better. Science. Nice. And also, if you can, every night between 8 to 9 p.m., soak your feet in heated water in a foot bath for 20 minutes. No more, no less. 20 minutes every night. You can sit there and read a book, or you can listen to Mike's podcast, but soak your feet between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. for 20 minutes before you go to bed. And also go to bed early, before 11. It's good for you. Don't stay up. I know young people, they like to stay up, because they can. But if you start a habit of going to bed early before 11 p.m., it's good for you. In Chinese or in traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that 11 p.m. every night is already tomorrow. So if you go to bed after 11 p.m., you're already entering the territory of tomorrow, right? And so they want you to finish the things that you could finish before the end of the day. So go to bed before 11.
Yeah. Makes total sense to me. I love those tips. I think those are really, really good. I want to talk about your book too. It's called 99 Fire Hoops. And in the book, you talk about your father disowning you, which you described here on the podcast. I'm sure that was really, really difficult for you. There's no question that incident is going to impact you for the rest of your life. I mean, there's no question. But there are other people who are listening right now that have gone through similar types of things with their family. So what's your advice to other college students who maybe have these big disagreements with their parents or their immediate family members? I mean, what's your advice to them?
Thank you so much for asking, Mike. So in Chinese, there's a saying that your teeth and your tongue, they live in the same space, right? Because your teeth and your tongue, they all live in your mouth. So they share the same living space, but they don't always get along. Sometimes your teeth might bite your tongue, it's inevitable. That means the people you live with, your family, right? Sometimes you will have disagreements. Sometimes you have things like what happened between my father and me. He disowned me because he disagreed with my choice, and he would rather have me out of his house and never had anything to do with me than continue to live in this disagreement, right? So he made that choice. And now I have learned to do this. There's a saying, an African saying, until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter, right? So I wrote a book. This is my book. And in my book, I wrote about my experience with my father, the disagreement that he disowned me and all that. But this is from a perspective. This book is written from my perspective. It's not from his perspective. So if my father learns to write a book, I will not be a hero in his book. You know, I might be a villain. And so that is to say, it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to me, I'm always my own hero in my story.
Yeah.
Always. And in his story, right? In his story, I might not be. So the thing is, I used this strategy to help me to let go of the hurt that came with my father's choice to disown me. I was deeply hurt. So I used this strategies. I imagine an interview, like what we're doing right now. I imagine an interview with my dad, and I ask him questions. Dad, why did you disown me? Why was it important for you to let me out of your life? How did that serve you? That kind of questions. And I imagined this interview. So obviously my dad wasn't really there to answer my questions. That means I had to put myself in my dad's shoes to answer my own questions. So now I'm switching perspective. I became my dad, and I'm answering the questions from his perspective. And then I figured out, oh my gosh, my dad was just trying to do his best. And that's what everybody was doing. It's best to assume that everyone is doing his best, because that's all you can do is to imagine, oh, he was just doing his best. That was what worked out for him, right? Because I don't really know what he was thinking, and I could only come up with this answer, and that helped me. Because if I keep telling myself my dad was just doing his best, then I will not continue to hold that hurt and hold that hate. I would let it go and think there was nothing else he could do. That was the best he could do. Even though in honesty, I don't know if that really was the best he could do, but I choose to believe that.
Yeah.
To help myself to let it go.
Right.
Let it go so I can have happiness. So now I don't have any resentment towards what he did. It was in the past, and he did his best.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you brought that up. It's interesting because just yesterday I recorded another podcast, and we were talking about forgiveness, right? And sometimes that's hard for us to do, but you end up carrying all of this heavy weight with you if you don't learn how to forgive. And what she was saying was that basically she has this great exercise where she tells her clients to essentially write a letter asking for forgiveness from the person who has done wrong to you. And your mind doesn't really know that this person didn't write it, that it's really you, right? But by writing that letter and asking for forgiveness, then suddenly you let it go, and then you can move on with the rest of your life. It's amazing that your brain doesn't even realize that you yourself wrote the letter.
Exactly. That is such a great way to help you to forgive others.
Yeah.
And just to kind of piggybacking on what you just said about forgiveness, there's a story, of course, it's a Chinese story, that there was a man who was very angry at his relative who did something wrong to wrong him. So this guy was so angry at his relative who lived in another village. And so this guy, he's like, well, I'm gonna go and punish my relative in the next village. So he went to his farm and he gathered a whole bucket of manure right? And he decided to carry this bucket of manure across the entire village to the next village and dump the manure in front of his relative's front door, so that when his relative opens the door, he will step on the manure, and that's a punishment. And so this guy is like, that's a brilliant idea. And so he went and he did exactly what he planned to do, and he traveled with this bucket of manure all across the village, like miles and miles and miles. And he finally arrived at his relative's house, and he dumped the manure in front of his front door like he had planned. And he knocked on the door, and his relatives opened the door and said, "What?" And he's like, "Here's my gift to you." And his relatives looked down at the manure, and he shut the door. So now who was being punished? It was the guy who carried the manure for miles and miles and miles, because he had to endure that scent, that odor, that he was the one being punished, because he had to smell it for miles and miles and miles and hours of travel. And the person he tried to punish opened the door, maybe 2 seconds, shut the door, knowing there was a pile of manure there. Don't go there, right? Yeah. And so the person who was being punished was the guy who carried the hatred and not let go. If you don't let it go, that will always haunt you. You're the one getting hurt.
Yeah.
And so just forgive. And
that's a great lesson. I'm really happy that you shared that, because it's a great lesson, I think, on the importance of forgiveness. Otherwise, you just get bogged down with that odor, like you said, forever. Yeah. And it's not a good feeling at all. No. Now, you live in the Salt Lake City area now. I mean, and I do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast, as you can imagine. So the next time I'm in Salt Lake City, what is your favorite restaurant in town?
Well, my favorite place to eat is not really a restaurant. It's a food truck. I don't know if you're into getting food truck.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but there's a food truck here in Salt Lake and Utah County. It's called Fatty Tuna. Like
okay.
Fatty Tuna. And they sell sushi, Japanese sushi and ramen and boba drinks, those Asian drinks with pearls at the bottom. Yeah. And it was, Mike, you can thank me later, but try it out, Fatty Tuna.
All right, I'm going to thank you later. I'm a big sushi fan, and I don't get enough sushi here living in Nashville. We're landlocked, and there's not a lot of good fresh fish here in Nashville, Tennessee. So so anytime I get a recommendation for really good sushi, I'll try it.
Yeah. Okay. Next time you're in town, look me up. I'll take you there.
All right, that's a deal, Allison. That's absolutely a deal. I will take you up on that. I think that's great. So if our listening audience, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to connect with you, if they want to buy your book, where should they go to connect with you?
Well, they can visit my website. It's just my name, AllisonHongMerrill.com. And on my website, there are links to where they can buy my book, because I know that not everybody wants to buy books on Amazon. Some people want to, buy books elsewhere. So I have options to direct people to different places where they can order my book. But basically, wherever books are sold, you will find my book.
I love it.
Visit my website and sign up for my newsletter. I will give you a Chinese name.
Oh, very nice. There you go. So it's AllisonHongMerrill.com. Go and check out her website. You will get a free Chinese name, and you'll have options on where you can go buy her book. Yeah. So those are all really good. Allison, I think you're amazing. I just want to tell you that. I think you are a wonderful, wonderful human. I'm so glad that you wrote the book and that you got that out there. I'm so proud of, how far you've come and all of the obstacles that you've been able to conquer. I think that's huge. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. And so I just want to say that I'm really proud of you. And I think you're an amazing person. I want you to know that.
I think that about you too. So thank you so much, Mike. I'm so glad you're my friend.
Yes, absolutely. I'm your friend forever. So so you can take that to the bank. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing. To our listeners, if you really enjoyed Allison's story like I did, I want you to like this interview on social media. I want you to share it with other college students that can benefit from hearing her words, because I do think that they're important. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, Allison, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mike.